Morning, everybody. Welcome. So, I've had a couple of people that have asked me about the clay that I use, and what I thought I would do is I'd sort of give you kind of a whole cycle of this particular clay, starting with what you saw just a minute ago is the riverbed in which I actually get the clay from. And so I dug up the clay and I brought it back, and what I did is I put it down on the ground and I let it sit until it was nice and dry. And for the most part this is all completely dry, and it's actually dry enough for me to do what I need to do with it. So also got some trimmings and some porcelain in there, and that won't make a difference in this particular clay. The other thing that I did was, before I let it get dry, I made some test tiles, and I want to show you real quick what I mean when I say I made test tiles, just so you know what I'm talking about. Grab those real quick. All right. So these are test tiles, and as you can see, what I did was I just made flat tiles out of clay and I scribed a line on them, and up in the corner I have a reference as to where I got the clay from, and sort of kind of what sort of condition it was in when I got it. The line that I have scribed on there is exactly 10 centimeters long. The reason you use 10 centimeters is because 10 centimeters, or the reason I use 10 centimeters, is that's 100 millimeters. And what you can do then is, when the clay is dry, you measure it again, and after it's bisked and after it's matured, you take a measurement each time. And the magic of 100 millimeters is that it gives you a real easy way to get a percentage. So say at bone dry, I measure the clay and it's 95 millimeters. That means that and that's, I don't know. I doubt that's what it is, but I'm making a number up. That gives me 5% shrinkage from wet to bone dry. So just a real quick way to keep track of that. All right, so I've got clay dry here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add water to it. And when you add water to this, one of the important things to remember is that it's going to soak the water up. So you need to make sure that you're checking it and that you're keeping it completely covered with water. Ideally, you're going to let this soak for as long as you possibly can, until you need it. It'll take at least, for these two tubs, it'll take at least 3, maybe 4 days of soaking before it's even to a state that I can use it in. Ideally, I'd let this sit a month. So set some water to it, and then you can see, I'll give you an idea of the kind of level that you're looking at. Alright, so that's going to soak, and I need to get some more water for this other one, and I'll do that here in a minute. But what I wanted to, one of the things I wanted to show you is the reason that you want to make sure you're keeping a good level of water in this is natural clay. It has stuff in it, and you want to be able to make sure that you can get that out. And this will get ran through, this will get screened out, or dumped through a screen anyway, before I use it. But the more that you can get out ahead of time, the better. You'll find all kinds of things in here: leaves, sticks, roots, insects, all kinds of wonderful things. And before I forget, the other thing that you want to remember is, if you get your clay from a river or a stream or something that changes every year, a hill bank that washes out in the rainy season, you have to do test tiles and check the clay every time you get clay, because the chemistry of the clay will change from season to season. I already know that this clay, and I've been using this clay for a while, and I know for a fact that this clay is not as plastic as it was last year. It's still pretty plastic, but it's not as plastic, and it's not going to be quite as plastic as I want it to be. So what I'll end up having to do is I'll have to add some clay to it. Luckily, what I found that I had, and I'll show you that real quick, is, move the camera. In these buckets, I found that I had some clay that has been slaking for, if I had to guess, I'd say probably 6 months. And this clay is super plastic. It's actually almost too plastic to use. And I don't have something I can show you. I'll show you what I mean by plastic when I get further along in this, and I'll explain that. But basically, this clay is actually well aged, and the more clay is kind of like wine and cheese. The longer it ages, the better it is. What you'll find sometimes is in your recycle buckets that if you've let them sit for a while, and it's been wet in there, you'll get in the clay and it'll have like this black, smelly, moldy stuff, and that's actually what you want. That mold will actually work its way through the clay, and it actually helps break up the particles, and it makes it even more plastic, and that's a good thing. Anyway, so once this clay is slaked, the other clay that I dug is slaked down, and before I run it through the sieve, I will add this clay to it. The reason I'm not adding it now is, and you completely could, except that I use the clay that I dug, I also make a slip glaze out of, and I want to make sure that I'm getting it in its pure state, so that I don't have to do a bunch of tests to get that glaze the way I want it. All right, so this is going to slake for a couple of days, and at that point we'll come back and I'll show you the next step where I sieve it out. Stay tuned. Hey folks, welcome back. Okay, so it's been a couple of days, and I'm almost ready to pass this through a screen and let it start setting up so that I can wedge it. Before I do that though, I want to get some out to use as a slip glaze. And I thought I'd show you that real quick. So this is pretty much the consistency we're at right now. It's fine slip. And this is what you want. The reason you want about this consistency is it's just easier to work with. You have less mushing you have to do on the screen. So still got a few chunks in it. Let it set for another day and that'll take care of that. And the other thing I'm going to do as soon as I get this slip out is I'm going to add into it one of the buckets of clay that's been slaking for 6 months for that area. And we'll let it all get together and get, fancy word, homogenized. Just all mixed in together so it's all kind of the same. And the reason we're going to do that is, and screen that through, is it'll make it a lot easier later when we go to wedge it. Alright, so what I've got here, just a regular container, and this is an 80 mesh sieve. And 80 mesh refers to the number of strands in an inch. So this is 80 strands per inch. It's pretty fine. You can get them in 100 mesh, and you can also get them in smaller sizes. Yeah, smaller sizes, larger sizes. 60, 40. I think they make them in 20 also. But once you get down to about 40, I'm going to show you a cheaper alternative to 40 mesh when we go to screen this out the rest of the way. Anyway, so I got that, I've got a container, and I've got my little pitcher. Oh, I forgot something. Got an old credit card. This one was actually mine. Talk to your friends, family, when they have cards they don't use, and normally what happens is they cut them up and throw them away. Ask them to give them to you. These make great tools for pretty much everything, from throwing to doing this, to cleaning off your wedging table. You can use these for darn near everything. So, you need that. Just get some slip out. And we're just going to go ahead and fill this up. Alright. And it's going through on its own pretty well. But I'm a little bit impatient. So take a card. And you just kind of work it through. Basically what you're doing is you're just cleaning off the screen itself. As the roots and branches and whatever get on there, they start trapping grit and sand. And since this is natural clay, there's going to be sand and grit and things like that in it. You especially don't want that in your slip glazes. So you want to make sure you're getting those out. This will push through a little bit of the sand, the finer sand, and that's okay. You really, to do slip glazes, you really want at least an 80 mesh sieve. Once in a while, just kind of clean off your card, whatever you're using to scrape it with. Put that back in there and it'll all work through. Alright, you want to make sure when you're doing this you're not pressing down super hard. There's no reason to. It's not going to actually make it go any faster. All it will do is it will wear out your sieve. Will break the screen loose from where it's connected on the bottom. You'll end up with bigger holes. Just, yeah, it's not necessary. You're not actually trying to push through a bunch. You're just kind of cleaning off the screen itself and get it all nicely worked through. I'm still recording. Yep. Good. Okay, so at this point, we've pretty much got most of it through. Alright. I'd call that close enough. You can either continue working this or not. You'll get a little bit more through. You'll push through more clay. But at this point I'd say that we're probably good enough. And so, what you have is clay, but there's a lot of other stuff in here. At this point, it's all kind of concentrated down. So you can make a decision at this point as to whether or not what you want to do with this. You can either dump it back into here and get the clay out later, and you'll end up with a little, you'll end up with a little of the grit that's in there in your clay, but not a whole lot. Or you can just throw it to the side. Personally, I went to a lot of trouble to dig this clay. That river, the place in the river where I get the clay is about a third of a mile from the road. So it's about a third of a mile I have to haul the buckets. So I'm not really one to waste any of it. All right, clean this off real good. The reason I say clean it off real good is because if you look at the bottom of that, that's all good stuff right there. You just want to make sure you scrape that down. You'll notice that I have this sieve sitting so that it's on the outside of the container. You want to do that just in case, so you don't get stuff that you wanted to avoid having in there. So. All right. And now we have a slip glaze. Hey folks, how's everybody doing today? So it's been about, this clay's been soaking for about 4 days now. I went ahead and added the other clay, clay that had been soaking that I had in the buckets to it. And we're going to go ahead and start screening some out. A couple of things here. I said I'd show you a cheaper way to get a pretty fine screen, and what I have here is a couple of dollar store splatter screens. I don't know if you can see those. These have a pretty fine sort of mesh on them. They're not an 80 mesh. And I honestly don't know what it is. I haven't taken the time to count. But it's pretty fine. And I'm going to use 2 of them, and it's going to give me a reasonably good way to screen this out. I've actually had a mouse chew on these, and it should be okay anyway. A couple of things with these. The attachment points on these are not so great. So you can't put a whole lot of pressure on it when you're screening it through. So you really want to make sure that you've got something pretty flexible to use. Go back to the old credit card. These are nice because they fit really nicely over a bucket. Which just makes it a whole lot easier. The reason I'm doing this into a bucket, 1, because that's what my screens fit over, and 2, it just makes it a little bit easier. Once I'm done screening this out, I'm going to go ahead and put it in another tub. Because the more surface area you have, the faster it dries out. And, okay, so that's that. I got a bucket here, and this bucket's kind of stained just from the iron-rich clay. But one of the things it is it's clean. You want to make sure that you clean all the old clay out. Same thing with the tub that I'm going to use. It's all been cleaned out really good, or really well. The reason for that is you just want to minimize the amount of extra stuff. You're going to a lot of trouble to get all of the foreign matter out, and you want to make sure that you're not putting any back in. And I've got the clay, and it's pretty well all slaked down. There's still a couple of lumps in there, but that's not going to matter. And I've got something here, just as we go along, I can keep agitating this if I need to. So there's that. What else? The best advice I can give you is work in batches with what you can use. Because like I said, the longer this sits, before it's actually wedged up, the better. My wedging table will handle about a bucket and a half's worth, so I'm only going to do about a bucket at a time. It's easier that way, and it's pretty efficient. I'll go through about a bucket's worth. About 10 days will, depending on the kind of production that I'm doing. This will last me about 10 days. So by the time I'm on to needing that second tub, it's going to have sat for, if I had to guess, I'd say probably about a month. So, and like I said, the longer it sits, the better it is. So, just like when we were doing the slip, we've got a picture and we've got a credit card just to kind of clean off the screen, kind of help push stuff through. The other thing I have is I have a little bit of extra water, and what we're going to use that for is periodically we're just going to add some water to this just to help wash things through. It's about 95, it's supposed to get up to about 100 today, so that extra water is going to disappear fairly quickly, so we don't have to worry about that. Biggest difference in doing it with this instead of the regular like glaze sieve with the tall sides is you have to work in smaller batches. But as you can see, it goes pretty quick, so it's not a huge imposition. Okay, so it's been about 45 minutes, an hour, and we're pretty close to done. Finish this last one up, this last little bit up. I said it's a relatively quick process. It's not a quick process. What you can do to speed it up is your slip is a little bit thinner. This will go faster.
like everything else, there's a balance involved, and the balance on that is, with it being thinner, the more water separates out, so you actually end up with less clay to work with. If you're going to do this whole, if you're doing this whole batch, this whole tub at once, then that's not a big issue. If you're doing smaller batches, it may not be a big issue for you either if you don't mind doing them more often. Like I said, this batch will last me probably 10 days, depending on how much work I'm doing. I'm going to call that done. I don't know if you can see this or not, but you got a fair amount of organic matter in here. You got leaves, bits of plant, some sand, some thicker sand, stuff like that. And that doesn't go back in there. Alright, so at this point you have several choices. Like I said, you can leave it in the bucket to settle out and drain the water off of there, and wedge it up straight from that. You can put it into a tub like I'm going to do, and then you're going to end up draining off the extra water and using it from that. You could put it straight onto your wedging surface and just let it set up like that. All of those are fine. To be honest, you could skip this whole process and just work with the clay like it is, and that would work too. People have been doing that for years and years and years. All of those are perfectly valid options. It's entirely up to you how you want to do it. So like I said, I'm going to put it into a tub, so we'll go ahead and do that. Check the camera. Down a little bit. All right. Alright, so one thing I am going to do, is I'm going to cover this with a piece of fabric. Just because I just went through a whole lot of trouble to get this cleaned out pretty good, and I don't want to have a bunch of stuff falling into it. And I'm just going to secure this onto here. Like I said, it's getting close to 100 degrees, so this won't take very long at all. And same thing with this tub. Slip. One thing I am going to do to this slip, though, is I'm going to add some more water to it. Alright, so that's pretty much it. You'll want to check this in a couple hours, maybe tomorrow, next morning, and what you'll see is it'll have separated out, and there'll be some water sitting on the top of that, just plain water. You just make sure it's clean, a clean sponge, and just get that excess water off, and you'll do that a couple of times, and then at that point it should be nice and ready to wedge up. And so I think that'll be the next clip that we do, is wedging up this clay and maybe working with it. All right, so stay tuned for that. Thank you.